It was constant migraines and headaches prior to cognitive FX, and that is a lot significantly less now. Like, I still get them, everybody gets them, but it's like it was a daily thing of some point in the day. It felt like my head was gonna freaking fall off, and now that is definitely not the case at all.
2014, just a few weeks before he was going to graduate, he had a fainting spell and fractured his skull, and so which we believe he had kind of accumulated issues due to hockey that ultimately culminated in these fainting spells and him fracturing his skull. So
yeah, I'm 25, and yeah, played hockey my whole life. Had a concussion or two along the way, but nothing that serious. And then I just got up in the middle of the night to use the restroom, and the next thing I knew, I was just on the ground. And then when I woke up in the morning, I made breakfast, and it tasted like nothing. And I was like, that's bizarre. And then I kind of started testing my smell as well, and nothing was coming up. So I actually went another day to school, and I was in athletic training class, and I told that to the athletic trainer, and she said, go to the hospital right now. So that's when we did. And then that's when we found out it was a skull fracture and like a severe concussion. And I really thought it was going to be like a 2-week to a month thing, not a lifelong thing. And so we started getting treatment like around here. And basically after plenty of doctor's appointments, it was always just, basically wait it out, which I was really struggling. So that really wasn't working for me. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to go to Cedars-Sinai, one of the best hospitals in the country in LA. And after going there all summer long, it was, again, the consensus was basically just wait it out. And that really made me upset and stuff like that. And then
so just to jump in, so the final conclusion of Cedars-Sinai was get him a psychiatrist and medicate him. And I'm like, wow, that's freaking awesome, right? I mean, can you believe that? Is that all you got? I got a world-class medical institution, and you're basically saying medicate him, because he's depressed. And I said, that you have no way to treat this. This is all you got. So it was really coming out of there. And that was kind of late summer before we found cognitive in October. So we were, pretty sad. I mean, because we were thinking, what are we going to do? And, you keep hoping as time goes, things will get better.
And yeah, I would say just hopeless was pretty much I was just like, I'm just going to be like a pissed off, confused person for the rest of my life. And then my dad brought up cognitive FX, and I was I thought it was an awesome idea. Cause I just didn't think one doctor's appointment or pills or talking to somebody once or, anything like that was going to be helpful. So I thought, an actual rehab was going to make a difference over the course of a week. And it 100% did. And then after going through that, over the week, I quickly, got a new outlook on how to, things that I can also do on my own to continue my recovery. And I started to actually notice some differences. And previously my grades in school, when I pretty much took a semester off where, it was all D's and F's. And then pretty much after cognitive FX, everything went to, A's and B's. And then I was at Santa Monica College, and then I was lucky enough to come back to Cognitive FX for a follow-up visit. And again, I would recommend that to anybody because that was super beneficial. And it showed my improvement, but also there's still work to be done. And then after getting through Santa Monica, I was able to get into Penn State, which I never thought I would be able to get into a school like that. And then after doing that, I just graduated in December and was only on the job hunt for about 2 weeks. And now I'm going to be a sales associate for Mondelez in Denver. And honestly, I attribute a lot of it to cognitive FX of just, giving me the tools to get to where I'm at now, which seemed impossible 4 to 5 years ago.
Well, I'm so glad that you guys found cognitive. It feels like almost cliche because it's the same type of experience every time that, for my wife, we we visited with 24 different doctors that all said the same things. Like, no, you're not going to heal. You're hopeless. Take these pain meds. Or some that said, oh yeah, I can help you. And then they couldn't, right? They did nothing that actually helped her heal. She went through all the pain and all the work, but didn't get any recovery from those treatments, and just going around the ringer. And then finally we found this place.
I went back to Cedar at the end when I found cognitive, I went online and everything, but I didn't know anything about it. So I went back to the doctor at Cedar and said, have you ever heard of these guys? Have you ever heard of this kind of treatment? Before I put my son in, I want to have some comfort level that, it's not going to make anything worse. And basically they said, well, we've been thinking about putting a program in like that. There's a lot of benefit in that. You should give it a try. So that was kind of what they said. I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me that, when I was there in the summer?
Right.
No, instead of what you told me, it was good. So just, it was, the good news is they seem to be aware that the type of treatment cognitive did, and they were positive about it.
Well, that is good to hear, because there are so many other clinics, and I know because I've been to a bunch of them, that do really similar treatments, right? Like it's no secret that the Dynavision board helps with cognitive enhancement, right? And like the Dynavision board reaction training. A lot of functional neurology places around the country use them. It's just cognitive uses them a little better. Oh, hello.
This is my
Hi.
mom.
How are you?
This is Donna, my wife.
Donna?
I wanted to jump in.
Yeah, well, definitely. Thanks for jumping in.
So the whole Cedars situation was like a freaking nightmare, and we met some really nice people, but the actual neurologist that was the lead treating physician is a guy, Dr. Sherzai, who's gone on to write books about Alzheimer's, and we actually have that in our family too, so that's all very great. But he stood there and told me he may or may not get better, and 6 months from now, and there was like this whole I had him tested for everything: endocrinology. Did he faint first, or did something happen and then he fainted? Did he have epilepsy? All kinds of stuff, and nobody had anything. And the first guy that we went to here in Orange County, he had the physician of the year all over his wall from Chicago for like 10 years. And he would just tell him, we would go in every 3 months, and he's like, oh, I still can't smell, I still can't taste, I can't sleep, I have anxiety. And he was having panic attacks. And it was like, we were like, what are we gonna do? I mean, it was really, really crazy. And when he came back from the first time, it was like night and day. I wouldn't say, he's totally there, and he knows that too. He still struggles with like short-term memory and a little bit of insomnia, but he went on to be able to, graduate from Penn State. And I totally attribute that to cognitive.
Wow.
There you go.
So sorry.
Amen. I agree.
No, thanks, Donna. Yeah, and nothing to be sorry about. That's why we're doing this call, because more people need to know that there's hope, right? That's the big missing piece, that there is zero hope coming from most of the doctors in the medical community about brain injuries, and especially about mild concussions, right? Because they just say, oh yeah, rest, you'll get better, right? It's like they don't believe that people with minor concussions can have lifelong issues, even though 10-15% of people that get a concussion, I think, tend to have chronic post-concussion symptoms. So Griffin, I'm curious, what were some of the symptoms that you had from your concussions and your injuries that you were then able to recover from and heal from at Cognitive?
I would say, well, and my mom knows this well, I had a couple of just absolute meltdowns where it's like, someone cuts in front of me in line at the airport, and or just little things that would just like make me just have a crazy reaction, like, and a meltdown that, that shouldn't happen. So I would say that was a big one, because I did have 2 or 3 kind of big meltdowns where it was over something so small it shouldn't have been that big of a deal. And yeah, it was constant migraines and headaches prior to Cognitive FX, and that is a lot significantly less now. Like, I still get them, everybody gets them, but it's like it was a daily thing of some point in the day it felt like my head was gonna freaking fall off, and now that is definitely not the case at all. So I would say those are like the big ones.
And memory?
And then memory, is definitely improved because I couldn't remember anything at the start of this. But and I have a lot of work to do in that department also. But I've definitely noticed some improvements there.
If I could jump in and just tell you how great Dr. Fong was.
Oh, she was fantastic.
But I couldn't even talk about it without crying, and which is the reason I'm not on the call. But she was amazing, and she called me back, and I had to pull over my car, and I was crying in the car, and she was just so nice. And sorry,
That's okay.
because really our lives were like upended for like 5 years. And another thing I wanted to add was that he has used long distance running to help manage the anxiety and retrain his brain and his body, and has gone on to be like a very good long distance runner.
Yeah, so that's actually one thing I forgot to mention also. I literally didn't run before Cognitive FX. I was just always a hockey player, but now, I mean, since I've done like 5 to 6 marathons and continue to, want to do that for the rest of my life. So that's another, positive, I think, that could have come out of it.
He didn't even used to like to walk.
Yeah.
Well, seriously, I don't understand personally, because I'm not the one with the brain injury, but experiencing some of this through my wife, she couldn't walk down a hallway if there were distracting lines on the carpet, like hotel hallways, out of the question. She would, just kind of look up and hold my hand as we were going to wherever, we were staying. But like running, she could run about across the street, and that was it before her treatment at Cognitive. And now every morning she jogs for at least a half mile. And she does like the sprints. Do you remember, did they do the sprints with you, like on the bike, you'd sprint for 40 seconds and then
the treadmill and the bike and some stuff outside as well.
Right. So like that treatment, she continues that every day, and she just keeps pushing her limits a little more each time. What would any of you suggest to people that have been dealing with concussion symptoms? I mean, whether it's Cognitive FX related or not, what's your advice to someone that's dealing with some chronic PCS right now?
I would say, and if you can, go to Cognitive FX, but there's I would say, finding a hobby like that's an activity like running or hiking or something like that, and just kind of working at it. Like, they gave like a ton of play taboo while you're trying to balance on one foot while or like puzzles, or just
doing a lot of puzzles.
I really enjoyed puzzles, and I think that was also, things like that, just to because what they told me was your brain's supposed to be like an ocean of in terms of blood flow, and mine was like flooded in some parts and like a desert in others. So like activities like that could get blood flow there, and just like if you do work at it, then like you can make like new pathways, and you can heal yourself. So yeah, just sitting around and being depressed about it is not gonna change anything. So it definitely takes some work for sure.
Back in the summer, it was either June or July. This was right before we found Cognitive FX. I had a mental, emotional, full-on breakdown, just feeling so overwhelmed right after about 3 years of obsessively researching, trying to help my wife, but not getting anywhere. I lost it for a few days, and I felt the isolation and depression that would come with wanting to help my wife, but not having any resources, and knowing that I couldn't do anything to help, and that no one else could really do anything to help, even though people wanted to. Like, I was totally and completely alone in that. And I was in the car driving with her, and I said, like, in a really frustrated voice, it's like, I just need an advocate, someone that can help, someone that's not on payroll, someone that just wants to help. But that didn't exist. And then as soon as those words came out of my mouth, I knew that I had to build it. So that's what this site is called, Brain Advocates. And I'm building this as a content resource that is dedicated to helping people recover from brain injuries and from concussions. So I'm taking my skill set within marketing and content creation, and I'm creating a database of resources for concussion, and then a community. I'll show you this in a second, that Cognitive FX is actually going to help me build. But I'm creating this resource database for individuals to at least see what's available, right? Not that all of these things are necessarily going to work for every person, but just to see all the different options available to someone in their concussion recovery. That, you know, just because one doctor says that there's nothing you can do, just go home and rest and hope to get better, like just that's not true, right? That there is so much that different people can do to experience healing and to just not get left behind. So I'm really excited for this one. I haven't quite finished it yet, but how the medical establishment fails brain injury survivors and why there's hope anyway. So this is like my pet project that I've been working on since August. So we're building this online forum, and we haven't even launched it yet, but it is to help people connect that have had brain injuries with people like you, Griffin, that have been in that situation, but since found some recovery and are still actively working toward recovery, so that people that know, the select few people that know that there's hope and that know how to heal, can help those that are new in the experience and that have recently had a concussion or are finally looking for resources to find that healing. So anything that you would want to be involved in on this side, we can facilitate, and we can make sure that you don't have to build it all yourself. You can just plug into what we're currently building and interact.
Yeah, I would love to be a part of it. I remember, I'm pretty sure after the first time they said there was some sort of Facebook page, and that like they had to like invite you. And either I never got the invite or I misplaced it, but I definitely am interested in joining a community like that.
I'd love that. And like initially, Facebook groups were so good for this sort of thing, but you know what happens? You get on Facebook, and then 15 minutes later, you forget why you're on Facebook. Yeah. Right? And for people with concussions and post-concussion symptoms, that just gets exacerbated. So that's why we're creating this separate community with zero distractions, zero ads, just people talking and communicating. So once we get that launched, I'll make sure that you get an invite for it.
Yeah, please do. Cause like my mom kind of said, it's just some people like really like just have no clue. And even if you tell them, they just kind of like, they're like, they nod, but they don't really understand. So I would love to connect with other people who, and that's why I like Cognitive FX, because they got it, and I just felt like they understood what I was saying, and I would love to connect with other people who are going through it as well.
One final point for me is I can really relate to you not feeling like you could find anybody, and I felt like I got to a point where I couldn't even talk about it because people would just get like a blank look on their face, and they'd say, like my friends and acquaintances and stuff, and they would just be like, "Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that," and then change the subject. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, okay, so maybe I'm just not going to tell anybody.
Right.
So anyway, you can feel free to edit out my crying.
Oh, no, that's golden. We're keeping that. So this is written by a guy named Clark Elliott. I'll just put this link in our chat. This was written by a guy named Clark Elliott, who was a professor of, what was it? Artificial intelligence. He was a professor of artificial intelligence, and then he was rear-ended and got a concussion, but no one knew how to work with a concussion, and no one knew how to explain what was going on. So in his background of, it looks like I bought this I bought this for a doctor here a few months ago. With his background in artificial intelligence, trying to figure out how to create coding to mimic the activity of the human brain, he was able to put a language to what was going on in his head and what wasn't working. And it was really cool to read this with Brittany. I would read it out loud and she would listen, because reading that book finally gave us a language to talk about what she was dealing with and where I could understand it. So that's something that definitely you guys should look into. I think you'll just see a ton of parallels, Griffin, in your experience and some of the things he talks about. Maybe not completely, of course, but some things. Guys, thanks for chatting. Thanks for jumping on the call. I'll shoot you an email once I have a blog published with this, and no one's seen it yet, right? We haven't launched the site, but it's cool. Like, you guys are making a difference, and someday someone's going to watch this video and it'll click for them, and then they'll go to Cognitive FX and they'll use your faces as their first touch in healing, right? That reference point that that it was that interview, listening to Griffin talk about his experience, that gave him the courage to go try something else.
Well, I think you're doing some great things.
Yeah, thank you very much.
The site really looks great. So if there's anything we can do, go forward, just let us know.
I will. All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
I'll tell Dr. Fong that you say hello.
Please do.
All
Thank
right,
you.
see ya.